Welcome to the Cosmic Intelligence Briefing with Tom Garland. We explore the energetic, cultural, and astrological patterns that shape our collective experience. Logic leads us, light guides us, and community connects us on this journey of deeper patterns and higher perspective. Tom Garland is a metaphysical advisor, astrologer, and systems thinker. His work integrates Western and Vedic astrology with technology, economics, and philosophy. Each month, Tom offers an in-depth cosmic intelligence briefing, exploring patterns that shape our world. We embrace two paths: logic, focusing on reason, systems, and evidence, and light, rooted in intuition, symbolism, and energy. All perspectives are welcome in this conversation. Engage with curiosity, share observations, and respect all ideas in the chat. This video is produced in partnership with the Academy of Logic and Light, which creates accessible content to bridge logic and light. Co-host Julie Christine supports the live experience as community liaison, gathering your questions and themes throughout the video. We believe in two paths, one conversation where all perspectives are welcome. We bridge logic and light, building community and expanding consciousness together. Enjoy the show, and feel free to share your questions and where you're watching from in the chat.
Hello. We've
Hello.
made it to August.
Oh, barely.
Barely.
Yeah, by the skin of our teeth.
We have been really awaiting this episode, at least on my end.
Yeah, it's been an interesting couple of weeks of August so far. And it has not let us down in terms of what we anticipated, as far as a lot of stuff all across the board. Eclipse energy, all these planets moving into Leo, lots of fire.
Mm-hmm.
Figuratively and literally. I mean,
Yeah.
we just in my town here in Southern Oregon, I've had 3 fires start within about a couple of miles of my house.
Wow.
And yeah, within 20 minutes, there's helicopters flying over, sirens going down streets, the plane flying overhead, putting down the red fire suppressant powder and whatever it is.
Wow.
And, I mean, they do a great job, but it's almost like all of Oregon is on fire.
Feels like the world is on fire.
For sure. Figuratively and literally.
Yeah, it feels, we can feel it.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's like the highest heat I've seen in a really ever, maybe? I don't know.
Oh yeah, they've been talking about these polar heat shield waves coming down through Canada. You've got people questioning whether and why Europe has been so against air conditioners for the last 25 years, right? Everybody's like, we went to the US for FIFA, and air conditioning is wonderful. And
yes.
And then they go back over to Europe and there's this heat wave, and for whatever reason they decided that having air conditioning was not good for your health. But there's a lot of heat is also not good for your health.
Yeah.
So
yeah, balance is key, as most things in life.
Yeah. And then of course Kilauea is going off, Mount Etna is going off, all sorts of volcanoes are going off right now.
Wow.
The sun is going off. The plasma is charging our atmosphere. It has been
yes.
Yeah.
I literally, like, my field feels electric constantly, and I just feel like I'm like constantly just rubbing electricity out of my field and trying to get as grounded as possible. And like going through, you can physically feel the time shifts and the dimensions and you can feel all the chaos, because sometimes I'm like, it's almost like dizzy and like nausea, like all of it all at the same time. I'm like, okay, this feels thick and heavy. We're gonna sit down for a second.
Yeah, like even the shutting off of the CERN particle accelerator was supposed to kind of start collapsing all these quantum entangled timelines that kept jumping, and it was supposed to calm things down. It just depends on, I guess, whether you can tap into that kind of subtle energy or not.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's true.
Lots
Well,
of interesting energies for sure.
yeah. Are you ready to hop into it, or do you have a disclaimer or briefing beforehand?
A disclaimer. Yeah, there's a lot of thick information, because what I thought we were doing and thought we are doing is kind of what we left off with the last session was, we're going to have this eclipse on the 12th of August. And we were coming on 3 days later. And we were going to kind of in hindsight, oh yeah, and if there's a couple of things that have been brought up in this edition of the resonance papers that I kind of brought up in the deck we have for today. So
Good. Good.
Yeah, it's been flying. But even in the resonance papers, that we do have this kind of 2 weeks between eclipses that are kind of a stasis time, a holding pattern, between the culmination event of a new moon and 2 weeks later with this full moon happening. Right? Which, solar eclipse, lunar eclipse. So I did kind of collect some news, whether any of it floats to the top or not, whether we get to it all or not, we'll see.
Okay.
If anybody wants to jump in the live chat, ask questions, we can always, pause and take a look at that. But so there's a lot of information here. So I'll try to push through it and see what's worth talking about and what isn't.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So, okay, there it is. So this is the title. We talked about how the solar eclipse, being in Leo, being with the South Node, is it about dissolving of authority? Sun being in its own sign, Leo, you can consider it like the crown. So there was supposed to be this theme of the crown, and whether that's literal, kings, leaders, presidents, dictators, or it could be something symbolic in your life, your boss, how you're the boss in certain aspects of your life, things like that. So 3 days ago, right, the shadow crossed and really changed the lighting of things. That's what an eclipse does. So just to kind of start simply here, what an eclipse is it's coming in and taking away the typical light that you would have. So with the sun's always shining all the time. Okay, whether our planet's facing it or not is one thing, but the sun is always shining. But when it's getting blocked by the moon, that moment, that series of moments where the moon blocks the sun's rays, I mean, it trips up all sorts of things in nature on an energetic level. I mean, you see birds and animals kind of freak out a little bit. And there's always been this kind of notion when eclipses happen that powerful figures rise and fall, battles and wars get won and lost. Famous people come in and out of the limelight. And so now that the crossing has happened, what we can say is it changed some lighting for us. It's kind of whatever we're looking at normally, the lighting shifts and we get to see things that we don't normally get to see. We get to see what's actually in the room. Okay, so we're going to kind of look, hopefully, and see if we've noticed anything. All right, so one of the questions you ask, or two of the questions, is, was any of this solid once the light shifted? And then when we get to the lunar eclipse, we're going to be asking what happens when it floods. And the reason I say it floods, and that's part of the title, The Flood, is because this lunar eclipse is happening in Pisces. It's a Virgo Pisces axis eclipse, which is actually the last one, I believe, of a series of Pisces and Virgo eclipses that we've had over the last few years, which has actually been a fairly long time for that to occur for typical eclipse seasons. So the one we just had was Leo and Aquarius, the first of several that we'll get. And this one kind of back shifts us into the Pisces Virgo axis this coming 27th, 28th, depending on where you are on the planet. So I showed this map the last time we met in July. And so we've made it to the 12th, the solar eclipse, shadow over the crown. And so what I said here was there was a diagnostic subtraction, and it can target authority, decorative authority, and unaudited dependencies to reveal what's real. So in a sense, eclipses are diagnostic. The subtraction targets what was already hollow in the first place. So on one level, mechanically, an eclipse really adds nothing, right? Because it's just changing the light. No planets arriving. The moon does park in front of the light, so to speak. So it's a subtraction, not necessarily an event in and of itself. But depending on what system of astrology you use, Vedic always likes to say, hey, 3 days before to the eclipse and 3 days after, there's always this kind of realm of intense shifting. All right. Now, another way you can look at this is like a power test. So say you pull the plug and you kind of see what still stays active. Now, I've been in IT, so if you kind of do this in a server room, you pull the plug and you see if all the rack-mounted UPS devices still keep all the servers running. And anything that kind of drops was already kind of on, you could say borrowed power. You really don't know until the lights went out what's not standing on its own, so to speak. So what we've got next coming is the 27th, which is the clarity check, and we'll get to that. So what I want to talk about now is, really this, what did the shadow take from us in our individual lives and on a collective level? What revealed itself that's already kind of quit working? And I think, one of the biggest things that happened, you know what, I'll save it. I'll save it. So let's kind of see what it showed us. So this was actually in the resonance papers. If you go into the, I believe it was the Omen section. And, we printed this 3 weeks ago. And so there was the idea of where do these signatures cluster, right? So we have the empty chair. So this is, authority that exists on paper, like with nobody in it, right? So the org chart says, hey, there's somebody that's the CEO, somebody's the president, but nothing's coming out of that seat. And then we have the stand-in, right? The seat isn't empty. It's just not the person we think they're supposed to be. So the function, the role continues, but the person's not. Okay. And then, well, another thing to say would be the one that people miss is because it looks fine. The stand-in looks as if they're the authority, the crown, so to speak. Then we have the curtain. So there's a confident front, but there's a lot less behind it than that's being advertised to us. There's like a presentation layer, but there's no back end. We could throw in the Wizard of Oz, what's really going on behind the curtain. And then there's that self-steering movement or moment where the system's running, but nobody's hands on it. Nobody's really controlling things. And the process that keeps executing correctly after everyone who understood it left. So let's see kind of with some of the news stuff that we have going on, what kind of what's been happening, right? So, on one level, we've got Iran happening. This has been going on since the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in February. And we know that they lost their supreme leader, and they put in the supreme leader's son, I think it's pronounced Mojtaba Khomeini, and he's been apparently the leader since March 8th, but he has never appeared publicly. There's been no video, there's no audio, right? He wasn't even at his father's funeral. There's been a lot of statements issued in his name by the state media, and he's saying this and he's saying that, but there was supposed to be this proof of life video pushed days before the eclipse, but never happened. So we've got this throne, right, in Iran that somebody's in power. And we're supposed to be getting this video, but, you know, the question still is, and you know, a lot of stuff has been going on in the news, rumors that either his health is even deteriorated further. Apparently he was supposed to be badly injured, but there's also been talk that they're preparing for, you know, kind of announcing his death. Now, I don't know if any of this is confirmed or not, but he's also been referred to as like the paper or the cardboard supreme leader because nobody's seen him. And so the funny thing is that, you know, there's a story, or at least this is something that's happened in history, the substitute king. And this was in the omen section as well in the resonance papers, and it's an Assyrian ritual. I won't try to say the name. Well, maybe I'll try. It's like Sar-Puhi. It's the substitute king. And so the trigger would be in history, in ancient times, an omen predicting the king's death, you know, and usually that would be around a lunar eclipse, right? So what they would do is they would put a stand-in, and they would then enthrone this person in all the full regalia, sometimes give them a queen, but the real king would withdraw, okay, and would not be addressed as a king, but maybe as like the farmer. And so this substitute would hold up the office for up to like 100 days and would absorb the evil assigned to that crown. And then if nothing happened, either way, he would be killed and buried with royal honors, and then the real king would return. And so, you know, there's a few documented examples of this. Eshhardan, there was some, you know, records about this happening. It's actually backfired at least once. One time, an Era Emirati of Isin, I believe, installed his gardener as a substitute, but the king actually died on his own, and the gardener stayed on the throne and reigned for decades. So the stand-in actually kept the crown, funny enough. So, I mean, this goes back 4,000 years. So I kind of wrote about this 3 weeks before the eclipse, and we're still kind of seeing this, you know, energy happening to this day. So, you know, what's another example? You know, and this one would be a podium that nobody's standing at. And I think we all know what this one is if we watch the news, and that's Carolyn Leavitt, right? The youngest press secretary for the White House just suddenly announced her departure. And it was only 2 hours after the eclipse happened, and no replacement has been named. And I mean, the press secretary is the Mercury function of the state, right? The mouth that speaks for the king, the authority, so to speak, symbolically. And Mercury was right there next to the sun, or at least in Leo during the eclipse. So, you know, in these two examples, we've got one government that has a leader nobody can see, who speaks through statements other people issue in his name. And then we also watched a person who issues statements for the king, so to speak, walk away from the microphone, right? So we got two crowns, opposite failures, same week, same shadow. So crazy stuff. So going back to something like some of these other signatures here, we had the Columbia quake, which has been in a series of quakes that we've been seeing. Philippines, Japan, off the coast of Guatemala, the two in Venezuela, an hour and a half apart. And then we have this rough one. I mean, I saw the videos. It was a pretty intense one in Colombia. And we have, I think it's confirmed, we've got 280 dead, 1,400 or so injured, 12,000 homes destroyed. Everything's going to keep on climbing. So, one thing that happened was the side tower of this main cathedral came down. The Cathedral Basilica of Our Lady of the Rosary. And it's Colombia's tallest church. And it stood through the 62 quake, the 79 quake, but it came down in this one. Now, they had just installed their president, I think, a day or two before this. So, big test of authority here. Now, something else. I think we had the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center. We had the former CFO indicted, an indictment unsealed Wednesday on the day of the eclipse. Wire fraud, false statements to the bank, concealment money, laundering money, donor money to informants inside white supremacist groups. Okay, I mean, that's like the curtain example here. Look behind a confident presence, something that we've all looked to as some organization that was supposed to, support people that didn't have privilege, that didn't have the capability of representing themselves in court. And we're finding it, less than advertised in terms of this image that they've had. Now, I mean, there's denials, right? The lawyers denying wrongdoing. The SPLC saying the government's mischaracterizing this as an informant program. But, again, curtain type imagery here, curtain symbolism. And then we had a couple other things happen. We don't have to get into all this stuff, but it's just, I'll bring this one up. The ODNI, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Okay, this is the agency that's above the FBI, the CIA, and all the rest, and they're supposed to referee between all of them. And there was an FBI effort that went back and relabeled its own informants' Biden-Ukraine reporting as Russian disinformation, and not after investigating and finding it false, but without ever running the investigations. And so the ODNI found it was never corroborated either way. And in this case, we found out on the day of the eclipse that the task force was dismantled and under investigation. So the receipt here is nothing was really discovered this week. These are things that were happening in the past. Okay. They already existed inside the building, so to speak. It's that the classification in this case came off and now you can see it. Right. So it's kind of like the power test metaphor I brought up earlier. So now issue 8 was talking, about on this one page, and I think I'll bring it up here. Here we go. And so in the bottom right here, I was talking about Mercury opposing Pluto on the day before the eclipse, which is an investigator's aspect. Pluto's about what's underneath the surface, power dynamics, ego, the dark underworld stuff. And Mercury is that investigator. And so it's about buried information starting to move to the surface. And this was 18 hours before that shadow crossed the sun. And these files came out on the 11th. So interesting stuff. I don't know. There probably are a lot of other examples out there, but I just wanted to give a few examples of some of these signatures that came out of this eclipse. So this was the eclipse on the 12th. It was 20 degrees Leo, right there on K2. That's the KE here on the screen. And that's the south node. an eclipse with the south node is a lot different than an eclipse with the north node. So with the south node, there's a dissolving and extinguishing, and it's the sun being extinguished in its own sign. K2 will help reveal what's already gone. So there's no outer planet really touching the 20-degree mark in any of the other signs. So there really wasn't this like crowbar energy, which is why nothing was really destroyed in general, just revealed. So Leo, we kind of just in review here, is the seat of that eclipse that we had 3 days ago. Sovereignty, the throne, the visible center. Leo's also the heart. Okay, so the subtraction targets whoever holds the center of a system, basically. So individually, it's maximum self-identity for your personhood. Okay, nothing's borrowed outside of yourself. And that's the thing that got covered by the eclipse. So from a nakshatra perspective, which are the lunar mansions that Vedic astrology uses quite a bit in all of its techniques, the nakshatra, there's 28 lunar mansions, which is the moon goes through one per day in its whole 28-day cycle. And the nakshatra that it was in sidereally was Ashlesha. And that's the coil. Okay, the serpent that intertwines but is not striking. Okay, so there's like a hidden grip, dependencies, entanglements, like a hold on you that you didn't know was on you. And so also, like, K2 is the amputator. It's the headless node. It's the tail or the body of the snake. Rahu's the head of the snake. So it doesn't really take what's alive. It severs what's already karmically finished. So that's, again, why nothing was really destroyed. So I had brought up Sabian symbols at one point in a previous episode that we did. And so the 20-degree, which is actually when you use the Sabian symbol technique, you round up. So if it's past, the eclipse was past 20 degrees, 0 arcs. So it's the 21-degree Leo Sabian symbol, intoxicated chickens dizzily flapping their wings trying to fly. And so there's a keyword that Jones, who did a lot of commentary on these symbologies from the 1920s, it was accentuation. So this is showing bondage to external realities. Wings that don't work, drunk, flapping away. Okay, so the sky in general that day put a total eclipse of the sun in the sun's own sign on a degree about creatures performing a capability they never really had. Okay, and again, you could just leave it at that. That's where it landed. But I always love looking at these Sabian symbols these days when we have events like this. Always adds another layer of interesting symbology. So, as we start moving over the next 15 days, what's not moving is the actual lunar nodes, the Rahu and Ketu, the north and the south node. They're only moving 3 arc minutes. Okay, there's 60 arc minutes to a degree, and they're only moving 3. And that's just the nature. Sometimes they move fast, sometimes they don't. But it takes 18 months for the nodes to move one sign. So there's really not a lot of movement here. And so these nodes themselves sit at the 30th degree of Leo from a Sabian symbol perspective, and that's the unsealed letter. And the Jones concept word would be confidence. So it's an unsealed letter, confidence that isn't sealed. All right. So for this entire crossing between the two eclipses, the serpent hasn't moved at all. barely. It's parked on the last degree of the sign of Kings. So it's refusing to leave until the subtraction is finished. So this point of release has been sitting for 3 weeks, will be sitting for 3 weeks on the last degree of Leo, on a symbol of a letter that can't be kept closed, this unsealed letter here. And so we've been spending this week watching statements issued in a man's name by other people. I'm talking about Iran again. And I keep forgetting to bring up Fauci in all of this. That's another emperor with no clothes kind of a situation, but I digress. So when we move to the flood, okay, this eclipse involves Rahu, the north node this time, the head of the serpent. And we're in Pisces instead of Leo. So if we think about the first eclipse clearing things out, this one's going to fill the space back up. So it's not a total eclipse. It's not a blood moon. All right. It's like the moon gets 93% in and stops. So there's going to be like a bright sliver on the edge of it the whole time. So it is the largest partial eclipse, lunar eclipse, in the entire Saros series of these eclipses. I brought up the Saros series of eclipse last time in the last podcast we did. And I'll bring up that in the next slide, kind of what that means for the lunar eclipse, because it's a different Saros cycle. So a Saros cycle, just real quickly, is about 82 eclipses, and there's always a foundational one that's happened usually centuries and centuries ago. And that's the deepest one, and it never quite completes until you get to the last in the Saros series. But you always kind of want to look at the chart in astrology of the first one to kind of get an idea of what this current eclipse is pulling from a foundational level. Right, so it's 93% this time and stops, right? So this is not a drowning in Pisces. It's just a flooding. So this is the foundational chart for the sky back in October 25th, 1521. And every 18 years and about 10 days, there's another eclipse in this Saros cycle. So you can go back to like 2008 again and kind of connect what was going on in your life back then, where there's a repeat lesson, a repeat experience, another pattern, another clue in the pattern of this ongoing evolution in your life that portends to, what happened in 2008. I know we all keep track. We have journals and diaries that go back to 2008, right? So in this one, we've got the moon exalted in Taurus, fixed sign, fixed earth, what you accumulate, opposite of Scorpio sun. Scorpio is a natural 8th house. It's a house of surrender. So the moon wants the sun surrendered. We got Saturn in Aquarius in its own sign, squaring the moon. Okay, so the collective natural Aquarian energy, the collective is constraining with its ruler what you're trying to keep, what you're trying to accumulate with that moon in Taurus. Neptune, right there in the rising sign in Pisces. Neptune's the modern ruler. They didn't even know Neptune existed back in 1521. Okay. Neptune is within a degree of the moon by a sextile. And it's showing the potential before you're allowed to build and accumulate what you're doing in Taurus there. You also got Pluto trining from Capricorn, something structural breaking to make more room for what you're building. So this is that foundational chart for this eclipse coming up. So we do, we have 2 eclipses this month. One we just had, one we're about to have, 2 different families of sorrow cycles. The one that we had 3 days ago, the foundational one was from 1179, and this one's in 1521. So there's nothing being improvised with these 2 eclipses. Their signature goes back centuries. So where do I want to go from here? Let's look at the sky here coming up in 2 weeks. Is it less than 2 weeks now? Yeah, a little bit less than 2 weeks. So in this chart, we have the sun in Virgo opposite the moon. We've got square Uranus this time. The foundational one, Uranus, was conjunct the moon. This time it's square, and it's only off by less than a degree, 46 arc minutes. And this is going to fire 3 times in 18 hours. Okay, it's going to be at the moon. It's going to be at the sun because it's squaring the sun as well, and it's squaring Mercury. And just so you know, Mercury in Virgo is exalted. That's Mercury's own sign, and it's exalted in that sign in the early degrees. Now, sidereally, the moon in this chart is sitting in what's called Satabisha. And that's actually the North Node's own nakshatra, the nakshatra that's ruled by Rahu. So it's a Rahu eclipse in Rahu's mansion. And then we have Mars in Cancer. And Mars in Cancer is debilitated. That's the sign that it's weakest in the sky, in all 12 zodiacs. We also have Saturn retrograde and debilitated. Aries is the one sign in the sky that Saturn is weak in. We also have Jupiter in Leo, in Ashlesha, the nakshatra, which was the same nakshatra as the August 12th eclipse. So there is a revisiting of the coil symbology here. So Pisces, if we know the sign of what Pisces is a sign with no container. It is the ocean. Okay, it's not a river. It's nothing in it holds any shape. Okay, that's why people who are considered Pisces are dreamy and, don't have any boundaries, things like that. Now, Rahu, the North Node, is hunger, obsessive hunger. It wants more. It amplifies. And it never signals that it's full. Okay, so if K2's emptying on the 12th eclipse 3 days ago, Rahu's about filling that boundless space. And Rahu does not have a shutoff. So if Moon is the container of your feelings, and Pisces is already like a porous, watery sign, and you put that insatiable node on it, Rahu, and the water goes over the sides, okay, that's the whole flood right there in one sentence. So, Sun in Virgo, directly opposite, full moon. What's Virgo about? Virgo's sorting, attention to detail, organizing, measuring, itemizing. And Pisces is the exact opposite of that. It dissolves all the categories. Okay, so you're going to be handed something to sort that won't hold still long enough to sort it. And then we got that Uranus square. And it's in Gemini, the natural 3rd house. And in this chart, it is the 3rd house. It's an Aries rising chart. So Uranus is squaring with the energy of networks, communication, platforms, transportation, transit. Okay, so one thing I can tell you here, and I said this in the resonance papers, back up your stuff. Back it up by the 26th. For whatever reason, we don't know why, but it's just a protective measure. So again, we're not having a total eclipse. We're having a 93% eclipse. Flooded, not drowned. So the water is going to rise, but it's not going to like completely envelop you. So we've got 3 outer planets that usually take between 84 and 248 years to go around the sun. And for 3 weeks, right, since about July 19th, they've all been standing on the same degree in their respective signs in the sky. And now we've got the moon right in the middle of it, basically. And what I mean by that is if you go back here, here's Pluto at 3 degrees. Here's Neptune at 3 degrees. Here's Uranus at about 5 degrees. So they're all very much in a sextile relationship to each other. And now the moon shows up at the midpoint, basically, between Pluto and Neptune. So it's not an eclipse with an outer planet on it, but it's definitely an eclipse with all 3 inside the degree of the eclipse. We've got dissolution on one side, Neptune. We've got demolition on the other side, Pluto. And the moon's right between them. So they all lined up 3 weeks ago, and they were tighter than they've ever been in 600 years. I'm not even including when Jupiter kind of created that barbell bowl that we had on the 19th that I talked about. This is just these 3 planets. It's been 600 years since they've been in this tight of a degree standing. And they're all interacting with this eclipse. So here's another technique that I'll bring in here about astrology. There's different ways to check a planet's condition in Vedic astrology. You can see what sign it's in, what direction it's moving, and this is a Sanskrit system called the Avastas. And it scores the psychological state of that planet. And so I ran all 3 of these conditions separately. And these scorings kind of tell you something, and it points to one planet. Okay, so there's like 6 states in the Avastas, the Lagitati Avastas. And they describe really not how strong a planet is, but what condition it's in. And they have adjectives for them. There's proud when a planet's exalted. There's shamed, hungry, thirsty. Hungry could be starved. Thirsty, delighted, agitated. Okay. And so a strong planet in a bad state is kind of like a competent person having like a terrible week. So if we're just looking at the Saturn here at the bottom, Saturn's in Aries. It's in fall. It's debilitated. Its motion is retrograde. And it's just not happy where it's at. It's starving in a Mars-ruled sign. So I didn't go looking for Saturn, really. There's 3 different methods I'm using here that told me that Saturn is not in a great condition during this eclipse. So what's Saturn? Saturn's the container. Saturn's the structure, rules, contracts, a hierarchy, chain of command, boundaries, time. So it's the walls that kind of hold up a shape, right? So the moon's in the sign with no container, being filled by a planet that never says I'm full. Okay, the the one body responsible for containment in this eclipse is debilitated, retrograde, and has a negative Avashta score. It's the only negative one in the sky that moment, that day. Okay, so the flood doesn't really happen because the water's rising so much. It's happened because the walls were the weakest thing in the room, in this whole environment. So Mercury, you can see there's 0.3. Why is it 0.3? Why doesn't it have a good score? You'd think, okay, it's actually very close to the sun, which you would call cazimi, in the heart of the sun. That's a Western astrological technique. You also have it in Virgo, and it's exalted there. So why is it getting such a low score? Because technically, as an Avasta, it would be considered Garvita, or proud, when it's exalted. But when it's with the sun, the rule is, and they're friends, but when they're together, it makes Mercury agitated. And so then you have the moon opposing it, and the moon is the only natural enemy of Mercury. And so that opposition causes a starvation by the moon. The moon's starving Mercury, and Mercury's counts the moon as an enemy. But see, the moon doesn't have any enemies, so the moon doesn't return the favor. So you got Mercury proud, agitated, and starved all at once. That's why it's got such a low score, if you're wondering. So the most powerful thing here is the moon. That's the highest score here. So the body being covered, right, by the sun's, blocking the moon's reflection, that's in the best condition of this eclipse. So what I would say is that the moon isn't being punished in this eclipse. It's overflowing. Okay, so there's a difference, and you'll probably feel it as a difference between drowning and being flooded with something you're actually wanting. Is somebody asking a question? Is that what I see? So when eclipse, what should we do? Are we just only need to do meditation, or just get a rest, or something else? Okay, so this gets to, well, where is this eclipse happening in your chart? And we've got a slide for that, and I'll get to it. But in general, what I've been telling clients is you got to have the 48-hour rule right now. Even right now, between these two eclipses, if something shows up, some big offer, some situation, something gets revealed, you find out that you don't have the authority that you thought you had, anything that shows up in all these themes that we've been having, don't react. Reacting is coming from some subconscious urge, conditioning from your childhood. Something's what's the word I'm looking for? Compelling you to react in a certain way. And what I'm saying is, don't. Stop, be present, be in your power, and respond, but not for 48 hours. Let it, I hate to use the word fester, sit in reflection. Okay. So, that would be the general rule of thumb, I would say, in this energy for the next couple of weeks. Because we actually have something coming in here after this eclipse, and we'll get to it, where we're going to have the energy to build. Okay, and so we'll get to that. Okay, so this gets to the Mercury aspect, which is, it is a hard night, so to speak, but it's also the sharpest day. Okay, so that cazimi is exact at 10:04 a.m. and the eclipse is at 9:31 p.m. So this would be the 27th. This would be Pacific time. So that's why I'm saying, depending on where you are on the planet, it would be the next day. but you just kind of have to compensate wherever you're at. So the sharpest clarity of the entire season and the deepest flood of the entire season are kind of on the same night. Okay. They're on the same degree. They're facing each other. It's an interesting dynamic, I would say. You know, anytime you have Mercury cazimi, there's supposed to be this clarity of thought. You know, Mercury is the booty. It's the intellect, the mind. It's the ability to look at your options, to make choices, to try things. So again, being in a state of presence and responding 48 hours later, at least use the clarity in that place of pondering and looking at your options for what just happened. So another thing, and I'll hit this one real quick, Venus kind of comes into play a little bit. Venus is going into Libra. I believe it's already in Libra, but it's going to get to the degree of the eclipse. So it would be sextiling from Libra at 20 degrees, sextiling 20 degrees Leo. And so whatever crosses an eclipse degree or aspects it within an eclipse season delivers some of that mail of the eclipse, so to speak. So the degree is just as important when other planets either go over it or aspect it. So Venus is in its own sign when it's in Libra. So it's in full dignity. And Venus is about an exchange. Libra is the bazaar, the market. And so Venus is about knowing what something's value is. The pluses and the minuses, the pros and the cons, the cost of things. So Venus can fund what it promises during this time. Like if Venus was in Pisces, where it's in its fall, it's going to write checks that it can't cash, so to speak. So this one actually has the money. Not literally necessarily, but it could be. So it's a sextile. It's not a square or a conjunction. So it's kind of like opening a door and waiting. And, you know, nothing about a sextile happens to you passively. So it's, you know, I always said sextiles are kind of like a tickle. So, and Venus is the significator of worth as well, value, resources, relationships, what you're willing to pay for. Okay. So you got the significator of value returning to the exact degree of the subtraction eclipse at full strength on the night of the flood. Okay. In the one aspect that can only offer and never force things. So the eclipse took something and didn't explain itself, so to speak, but Venus kind of comes back and puts a number on it, like a cost. So I guess what I'm saying is, you know, whatever that first shadow took on the eclipse a few days ago, when we get to this next eclipse, the value can come back. You know, and it's not really to be argued with. It's going to like be an offer of something. Okay, so moving on, we're going to kind of move here. We just talked about the flood here on the 28th. A few days later, we've got this bedrock date, but then we also, and I'll come back to that, but we've got this final stress test happening on the 1st into the 2nd. And this is a Mars exactly squaring Saturn. And those are always real interesting. Okay, a reckoning. And in this case, for whatever August loosened or changed. So usually like with a conjunction, things are seated. So you would honestly want to go back to when the Mars-Saturn conjunction happened. And I believe that was back in April. You know, right around the new moon when we had the 7 planets in Aries. April 18th or 19th, I think. And so that opened the cycle. Okay, that was the seeding. So this September 1st is a waxing square from that conjunction. And so waxing squares test the build that you're doing. Now, like when you get to an opposition, that shows what it's going to become, so to speak, or what it became. And then the waning square on its way back to the conjunction asks if you still kind of believe in what's been built. So September 1st and 2nd, it's not like a bad morning that arrives out of nowhere. It's kind of like the first inspection of something that was started in April. And a lot of people kind of sometimes forget. They've already forgotten what they've started. Okay, so what we're seeing here, and I'm going out of order on purpose. I'll get back to the few days before, the day before. I'll tell you about August 31st and what that's offering. So you just need to know what condition the planet making the offer is in. Okay, so we're kind of looking at the diagnosis before a verdict, not necessarily the chronology, so to speak. So Mars in Cancer, debilitated, but it's kind of clean. There's no hard aspect from anybody else. So it can act. It's just not going to act with a lot of force. And Saturn in Aries is debilitated, retrograde, negative Avashta score. Okay, 3 indictments right on this one planet. So think about collectively and even in your own life, which institutions are quietly load-bearing on the walls of Saturn, right? Rules, hierarchies, what's going on at work, what's going on in your relationships, contracts that can't even take a weak hit, basically. So, Sabian symbols. Aries, 14 degrees, Saturn is a serpent coiled near a man and a woman. The key word would be from Jones is revelation. And so it's interesting, right? The serpent was frozen at the end of Leo. And Saturn over here is parked on a serpent degree for this, collision almost. So here's another way of seeing it. So Mars is weakened, but nobody's really bothering him. Saturn's weakened and everything's bothering him. So it's not like a standoff between them that can happen in the past in other times when Mars and Saturn interact. But there is a diagnosis happening here. Okay, so like a force that can't really punch hard. All right, or even that it's a punch that's meeting a wall that's already crumbling. And Mars is going to walk away frustrated when it's weak. And so Saturn's the one that's probably going to come down. Usually Saturn would restrict in a Mars-Saturn interaction. So I'm thinking more Mars is going to be the one that pushes through. So I think I'll just leave it at that. That's enough ominous talk of the Mars-Saturn square. So the August 31st, okay, this is the bedrock date. This is when Jupiter trines Saturn. Okay, Jupiter's even slower than Mars. Jupiter takes a year to go through a sign. Saturn takes 2.5 years to go through a sign. So when the season's dissolving is ending and we get the flood coming in, there will be a revealing of the stable structures that you can actually build upon. Just not necessarily yet. Okay? So Jupiter's expansion, opportunity, optimism, faith, the yes, it's the hell yes. But Saturn's at limit. It's the parent mind. It's the don't do this, the resistance, the hold on a second, let's review this. And Saturn's retrograde. It's all pointed inward. Let's review. Let's take some time here. Saturn's the no. If Jupiter's the yes, Saturn's the no. And every 20 years, they conjunct and they set the terms for what a society can actually build, right? That meeting is the seed. So when was that seed? It was December 21st, 2020. 0 degrees Aquarius. Okay, a nice, great conjunction that opened up in an air sign. And so, Pluto's now in Aquarius, kind of even shaking up that seed, funny enough. But, we can go back to 2020 and know what was going on back then. Lockdowns, let's distance ourselves, let's put masks on, let's be forced to take a vaccine. We've been all seeing what's going on in Congress about all this stuff lately too. So squares between Jupiter and Saturn, those are the friction points. This is a trine, and it's the first trine since 2020. So it's 6 years in, and the yeses and the nos, it's the first easy angle of this. Okay, the first time that there can be agreement without fighting. So it's when a thing planted the seed, it developed through, it's being evaluated, funded. Okay, so this is the first pass of it. Because they're so slow, there's going to be some retrograde action. August 31st is the first one. April 3rd, 2027 is the second review of the trine. And then the ratification, so to speak, the third pass is July 11th, 2027. So you're really not being asked to finish anything on the 31st. It's like a building permit. And you've still got 2 more inspections to go, so to speak. 3 pass structure. Okay, that's the fine print of this. So I think how are we doing on time, Julie?
Perfect as always. 102.
Okay, good. So I guess the question that you could ask is, what did you start yourself in 2020 that you'd forgotten you'd started? That's something I would ask. Okay. So, all right. I don't even need to look at this one. I passed this slide up. So let's get into, where is this landing for you? Where does this eclipse land for you? So if the eclipsed moon lands in your sign, the moon is the body being covered. Okay, so is your sign your sun sign? Is it your moon sign? Is it your rising sign? That's going to kind of shift the energy. But if that planet is near the degrees of when this eclipse is happening, it's going to affect you immensely, significantly. Now, Pisces, Virgo, that's the direct hit. Okay, and Pisces, that's already the thinnest membrane of the whole zodiac. The endless, boundless ocean. So there's a lot of absorption of ambient emotional data from people around you. That'll be the default setting going into this eclipse. Not a choice. I don't write the news. So, but you put Rahu right around this moon, and the filter is going to come off completely with all this emotional data. You're going to pick up everything going on in the room, and none of it's going to arrive labeled with who it is. So you're just kind of, if you're an empath, I mean, you're going to just be getting hit from all sides. So the best thing you can do is, I don't know, sage every morning. I don't know what to tell you. So Saturn being the boundary principle here and the weakest body in the chart, when that boundary is offline, reducing the input is really the only boundary you have left. So withdrawal, I wouldn't say is hiding this week. That's your manual override switch. Okay, so if you got to withdraw, if you got to close the curtains, if you got to just, binge watch a show, whatever you got to do to keep the energy regulated, do what you got to do. I wouldn't make any identity decisions while you're flooded. Okay, and then on the Virgo side of the day, do your sorting of all of it. The Virgo side of the day would be more like in the morning. The Pisces side of it would be in the evening. So if you've got Gemini, Sagittarius, you're going to get the jolt. That's the square to this eclipse. So Gemini makes a T-square to the Sun-Moon opposition, Uranus being at the apex in Gemini. That's where tension will discharge. Uranus always loves to discharge in very sudden, disruptive ways. And Uranus is going to kind of fire 3 times in 18 hours with the sun, the moon, and then the Mercury. So for you, the flood isn't going to be emotional saturation. It's more a jolt. Plans will need to get revisited without notice. These are the people that'll probably have tech failings. That's why I'm saying back up things. Something that you were certain about was scheduled, turns out not to be. So Uranus and Gemini is like the nervous system, and it's wired to like a generator. And it could, I would expect it to run hot going into this eclipse. And so, yeah, that's Gemini Sag. So the Cancer, Aries, Libra, Capricorn, that's kind of the mutual fall arena, right? We've got Mars in a sign that can't act, frustration, not power. Aries has Saturn in it, pressure, weaker than it feels. The breaks that you would have with Saturn don't work very well. Capricorn, your ruler, Saturn, is compromised. So I wouldn't be taking instructions from any structure that you're working within that's reviewing itself right now. So Libra, actually not that bad. Your Saturn's actually exalted in Libra, but Venus will be in Libra. And so that's kind of the one clean gift in the sky. If you're a Libra on some level, Libra moon, Libra sun. So that's the one sign getting the gift. Leo and Aquarius, I would call it the holdover, but it's bigger than a holdover. Right? So the passage is barely kind of started. They're the front. The Rahu and Ketu, this is the front end of 18 months of a transit through these signs. Okay, so the passage is really barely started. If you've got sun or moon or rising in Leo or Aquarius, these is just more signs that are going to show themselves and evolve and unfold over the next 18 months. So, yeah, 18 months on your axis, basically kind of starting now. These eclipses kick off these nodes' functionality in your signs. These are, funny enough, the pattern that I see from clients, these are the ones that are scheduling sessions with me, are the people that are Leos or Aquarius, for sure. So that pretty much nails it. So the September 1st to 2nd, the square exacts, that Mars Saturn, okay, you're going to have the trine that runs 2 more passes into July 2027. So this is like, this eclipse season is going to hand things off rather than close things, if that makes sense. So do we have any questions at this point? Just making sure.
Mostly just comments of hibernation and fear.
Oh, okay.
Not fear, but terrified for ourselves.
Terrified. Well, I never want to be the bearer of bad tidings, or the one that's too ominous in a negative way. But I also don't like to be the guy who sugarcoats things either.
No, I'd rather be prepared.
For sure.
I just put big X's on certain days, and I was like, don't schedule anything.
Yeah, I'm an Eagle Scout. I got to be prepared.
Same. I'm a flight attendant.
Definitely got to be prepared.
Yeah.
For sure.
Be prepared and then hide and no one will find me. That's not a flight attendant quality normally, but on disability it is. Wow, that was a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah. Just if I were to summarize this in like one sentence, there's the crown symbology really kind of plays out. I've seen it happen all over the place with clients, what I'm seeing in the world right now. And again, that was asked whether the crown in your life, the crown in your collective life is solid. Flood arriving on the 27th. what's going to be left standing on the 31st is what you really get to build on.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, silver lining.
Silver lining, yes. An ominous
Yeah, I mean, this is always was known to be a loud month. It was always known to be a loud month. September, definitely time to take inventory, take a breather, for sure.
Thank God.
For sure. But then we get into a bunch of retrograde energies going into fall.
Just leave us alone. We're all tired.
We all signed up for this.
Just in case you weren't reflective enough during eclipse season, Mercury retrograde will bring it all back. Just one final reminder.
Yeah, right. You know, all I got to do is remember that I signed up for this, apparently in full excitement, like we all did.
It is kind of like an exciting time to be alive, but also, the excitement and nervousness and anxiety are all in the same stomach.
Yeah, and if we just remember, like metaphysically, we signed up for this front row seats. We've got our popcorn, we got our hot dogs, we got our sodas. We're here to watch the show. It's when we feel like we're actually in it, and we forget that we're the observers. That's when it becomes too real. Yeah.
I also thought this 2 seats conversation, empty seats, was very fascinating, especially because I didn't know that information about, you know, another leader that has been missing. So that's fascinating. And then the timing.
I mean, you could even find other articles about CEOs of companies that are going on right now that it's like that they're not acting the way they usually are. They're not around. Certain things are coming out about them. Curtain signature, you know, robe signatures. It's interesting.
Very.
Yeah, I mean, none of them really boiled to the top of really bringing them up, but they're out there.
Well, I'm still waiting for some arrests from these files, but I'm trying to be patient. But I am glad that they're going and out there at least.
Well, exactly. Like we all need to see what's behind the curtains, because
it's
they've had those curtains pulled for a very long time in our lives.
Yeah.
And whatever clears the brainwashing and conditioning.
Yeah, when you said the man behind the curtain, I was like, that's so funny. That's how I've kind of been describing things for kind of quite a while. I'm like, things are not as they appear. Things are not as they appear. It's the gentle reminder to self also, because again, this can feel so chaotic on the outside of the world, like just looking at the screens of what's happening in the world, but also it can feel kind of chaotic inside of us, and as within, so without.
For sure.
Reflection and hibernation and self-care is vital.
It's always, I mean, this is the big lesson here about Leo is it's about our own true nature. It's the 5th house. It's the house of Dharma, of our own truth. And everything that you're saying right now, are you taking care of yourself? Everybody else could be running around with their heads cut off around you, and you might be conditioned to think that you've got to spend time, energy, and attention on all these other things going on around you. The best thing you can do is turn that attention inward and work on yourself.
Yep, absolutely. And if for anybody is out there that's like having an extra special awakening with new gifts and new strengths and all this fun things, this is also a great time to learn extra strong protections.
That's
especially if you're an empath walking around out there, because there's a lot of leaky projections and people are going through it. And as the walls and curtains are coming down and people are shining lights on things, I think the indoctrination of things is going to be a heavy one for a lot of people to process, you know, of what did they align their energy with, you know. But also in the heaviness of it, you don't have to look backwards. You can look forward to the new of what kind of energy do you want to call in with what's coming, you know. So,
the only way that you can orient yourself forward is to know where you've come from. But you don't have to go backwards in the process. For sure.
Exactly. That is that the loop, the identification of the loop, and then the moving on and growing from the loop so you don't continue to repeat.
As a spiral, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much for always all of your information, and also gives us a lot to chatter about later for the rest of the month.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah, and
word.
if you want the resonance papers, if you want the map for September,
Yeah.
make sure to get to my website and subscribe by the 21st, because that's when it ships.
The QR code is in the corner up here, and also I highly recommend a reading with Tom if you haven't gotten one. It is very enlightening and informational.
Yeah, every astrology session I do, I spend a good hour doing my own analysis ahead of time, synthesizing, pulling it all together, distilling it all, instead of just looking at it, 10 minutes before or as I'm doing the session. So it's chocked full of information for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate you, and we will see you next month.
Sounds good.
Stay safe, everybody, and hydrated.
And hydrate.
Thank you for joining us this evening. We bridge the gap between what the world often keeps separate, logic and light, and spirit and science. We welcome everyone to come as you are and invite you to become the hero you want to become through educational tools and community connection. We offer tools, teachings, and community to help you remember who you are. This includes live shows, workshops, nutrition and wellness, and exclusive member perks. Logic leads us, light guides us, community connects us. Check out our TV Digest channel guide on All TV. Catch your favorite show, live stream, or find a new favorite show to add to your notifications. We are always adding new standalone episodes and series. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like. Find us online on our website and all major social media platforms at Academy of Logic and Light. Click the link in bio to join our community. We hope to see you again soon, either here or on your hero's journey.